Dave Ballou spent 32 years working for the Beckett Paper Company, starting as the advertising manager and served as the president and chairman of the board until his retirement in 1992. And last year he spent putting together this marvelous exhibition on the history of Beckett Paper. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the Beckett family came to Hamilton and got involved in the paper business?
Well, William Beckett was a student of Miami and went to law school. He graduated at age 21 and started practicing law. And there was a man named Calvin Riley from Toledo. He was an industrialist, and he had the idea of starting a paper mill in Hamilton. The hydraulic and the Erie Canal and the river, they were all in the aquifer. The underground water were attractions. So he brought in a man named Adam Lowry from Scotland who had been a paper maker, and he started to build the mill. And then he went bankrupt. And Adam Lowry was here, and so Adam Lowry, Mr. Riley went bankrupt. Adam Lowry scouted around town and tried to find somebody who might be interested in building a mill. And William Beckett was buying property in that ward near the Beckett mill. So he said, go see William Beckett. So he did, and he took down his shingle, quit practicing law, became a paper maker in 1848, and that was the start of the Beckett Paper Company. Initially, it was a partnership with Beckett and Lowry, and eventually it became owned by the Beckett family.
Oh, they were the first paper mill in town, right?
Yes,
yeah.
And the oldest industry in town, actually.
Oh, okay. What kind of paper did they make at the Beckett mill?
Well, initially they made newsprint, and the mill, which cost about $11,000 when it started in 1848, they made newsprint, and 2,000 pounds a day was the output.
Wow.
And they made newsprint until the Civil War. And after the war, they got out and started diversifying. And eventually started making cover papers and very fine papers. And we were a specialist in fine papers. We made more colored paper than probably any mill in the country. At one time, we made 400 or 500 different colors.
Wow.
We had a lot of finishes. We made the original Buckeye cover in 1894. It was the first cover paper in the industry.
How many people worked at the Beckett mill?
At peak, we were over 500, about 550.
Would you have any estimate of how many people worked there through its history?
Oh gosh, well, I don't know. It was 163 years of paper making. The mill closed in 2012. And a few years before it closed, they moved all the finishing operations up to a plant. This is a point when International Paper had bought Beckett and from Hammer Mill. And so they moved all the finishing operations, and thus a lot of people moved. And so employment at that time was cut in about half, 250.
Okay.
But the average for many years was 300 or 400.
And what were circumstances that led to the mill closing in when did it close?
2012.
2012, yeah.
Well, you see a lot of people doing this and this, and not much of this.
Yeah.
There's just not the demand for fine papers there used to be, sadly. So they had to close the mill, and Mohawk bought Beckett in 2005, and 7 years later they had to close it. But they still make some Beckett papers up in Cohoes, New York.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, near Albany, New York.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now the Becketts were big believers in history, right?
Well, they were. They came to this part of Hamilton. They came in 1803, actually, same year Ohio became a state.
Oh.
And they had a sense of history, and they were good writers, and wrote books, and instilled in people who worked at the mill a sense of history. And there was a philosophy that we don't throw anything out, we keep things. And fortunately, I subscribed to that and underscored it, and we kept a lot of things, fortunately. Or now we are able to share it with the whole community.
Yeah. And so let's bring Kathy Creighton in here, the director of the Butler County Historical Society Museum, who helped Dave put this exhibition together. They've got some great stories about some of the challenges involved in that. So Beckett Paper had the policy of keeping things, and so they had like all this paper, all these documents that they've collected through the years, but then the plant shut down in 2012. So what happened? How did you guys get hold of all this stuff then?
Well, when Tom O'Connor, who was president and owner of the Mohawk Mill, Beckett Mill, called and asked me if I and my son Guy would go through the mill and take items for family. He wanted some items for his office in New York State. And then he said, you and Guy use your judgment in disposing of the rest of the materials.
Mm-hmm.
So Guy and I spent several days at Beckett just prior to its closing. It closed in December of 2012. Fortunately, we had a policy at Beckett which had been there for generations of saving items. So there were boxes and boxes and many boxes of photo albums. We'd always kept samples of our papers and our advertising. So we knew that it should come here as a permanent collection. Fortunately, Kathy Creighton and the Historic Society and the museum were happy with our donations.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took Ed and Kathy over to the mill, and that wasn't their last trip, was it?
What did you think about when you saw all this stuff?
It was like a treasure trove. I mean, it was like the motherlode of historical documents. The wealth of material that was there was just absolutely unbelievable. Photographs, even still stuff hanging on the walls, papers just everywhere. Even such things as the safety plaques, the signs saying so many days without an accident. All of this material that was, once in a lifetime material that we were able to save and bring back over to the Historical Society. It was just a wonderful experience getting to know, we actually felt like we knew Beckett after going through this experience.
Mm-hmm. But you've also found some things that you didn't quite expect, right?
Yes, like the door off the safe that, of course, the first thing they had done was strip the electricity out. So everything we were doing was with flashlight, and of course there's no elevators. And the safe door was in the basement. Thank goodness there was a ramp that we could use a forklift. And my husband literally pried the Mosler safe door off with a pallet jack and got it onto the front end loader and was able to get it up the ramp and bring it to the Historical Society. So not only did we get a piece of Beckett, we also got a piece of Mosler history with the safe door.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about the chapel. I think it's kind of unusual to have a chapel in an industrial place.
Well, we were touring the mill first time with Kathy and Ed, and I said, here's our chapel. He said, chapel? I said, yeah. So we went in the chapel, and I explained that back in the, I think it was early 80s, business was terrible. We'd had layoffs at the mill. We're going through a lot of challenges. And one of our employees, Tom Porter, who was a very gifted wood smith, came to my office one day and said, Dave, I have an idea. I said, what's that? He said, let's have a chapel. And I said, well, he said, I don't mean we're going to hold services, but maybe a little quiet place for meditation. I said, that makes sense to me. We sure need some help. So I said, I don't know where we'd build it. He said, I do. So he took me down in an old label room right off the finishing department. It was empty. And he said, this is a perfect size. He said, I'll build it if you buy it. So he got the materials and we had a chapel.
That's great.
And it was so interesting when we went there because I thought it was so unique because it's not something you would normally find. And thank goodness the people that were doing the scrapping of the building, I said, this is something I would like. And he said, what? I said, the door off the chapel. And don't ever give me a crowbar because I get into an awful lot of trouble. And the next thing they knew, I had the door off the hinges. We got the prayer board, bulletin board off, and it still had the signs on it as to who the prayer requests were for the day that the plant closed. We got the rack where they kept literature. It was just a wonderful collection we were able to get out of the chapel. And like I said, it's not even something you would think you would find in a plant like this. And that's what makes Beckett special. They had so many of these special family features that was part of the business.
Mm-hmm. Now I remember when all this was going on, every day I would come in here and there'd be a new pile of stuff from Beckett paper. Can you tell us a little bit about how much you actually brought out of there?
Oh,
lots and
tons
lots
and
and lots.
many vans full of boxes.
I think we made about 5 or 6 trips over there, and usually it was just the pickup truck, but a couple of times we went either with a car trailer or we actually went with a 4-horse trailer that we loaded floor to ceiling full of stuff, cases of paper that was still up there that had never been delivered, all the colored papers, samples of all the colored paper. We hauled, I don't know how much paper out of there.
Mm-hmm. And Guy and I made several trips with his van, with just boxes and boxes of pictures and albums. It was, frankly, an emotional roller coaster. Brought back a lot of memories.
It sure did.
As we brought it out and as we sorted out and organized this over the past several months. But we're so indebted to the Historical Society and Kathy, because this is a wonderful collection, and it'll be here forever. Because Beckett was certainly not the largest company, but we were one of the most involved in the community, and had generations of employees. Of course, we were the oldest mill, dating back to 1848.
So this is a lesson for people in Butler County and Hamilton to save your stuff, because there's a lot of history in this town that's gone missing through the years, because not everybody had that historic attitude that the Beckett family did.
Thank goodness we had that policy.
Right. Well, and the other thing is too, is that, you know, don't be afraid to ask, like, are you interested in this type of material? A lot of people say, oh, well, this is nothing we would want, but family histories, family stories. 50 years from now, your great-grandchild may be here trying to do research on your family, and if you didn't think to leave it someplace where they'd be able to find it, they're going to be lost. So we welcome all types of history brought in here. So the only thing is call us. I mean, if you're going to donate something that weighs 20 tons, like a lathe from Niles Tool Works, we may have to talk about this. But, you know, within reason, we're willing to be the storehouse for Butler County history.
Very good.
We filled so many nooks and crannies here when we brought the material, filled areas in the basement, the garage, any place we could find, put boxes. And then we started putting it together, and I think we had all the material, and finally Kathy said, no, we found some more, and we kept finding more boxes. We'd hidden it pretty well.
I don't want to tell you there's still more in the basement I think you haven't been through.
And all this stuff is still going to be here. So if anybody wants to do Beckett research, you know, or research on the era, they can come in here and look at all this stuff, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at some of the stuff that you brought. So you even took the furniture out of the place, huh?
Well, this desk, when the new office building was built in 1937, this was the president's desk, and chairs to match, and a big table. And a number of presidents used this table and this desk, and I had the good fortune of sitting there for a while, and some of my associates. So it's a big piece of history here. This is a portrait of William Beckett, pastel, the founder, and it was a gem that I found when we were going through the mill. I'd never seen that in all the 32 years I'd been there. It was done by one of the former employees of Beckett.
As a writer, I'm always attracted to the writing, the written stuff, and I came across this little book, and I was just fascinated with this. Talk a little bit about what this is here.
Yeah, this was also something I had never seen before. We found it in a box in a corner of a big safe. I'd been in the safe before. I never found that. These are incorporation papers starting in 1887 when the Beckett Company was incorporated. All handwritten minutes, incorporations. And we have books back here of the various minutes of board meetings. Sometimes the board meetings were held in the office, and sometimes they were held at the Beckett homestead. Mrs. Mary Milliken Beckett was Tom Beckett's widow, and she had the title president for years. She wasn't active at all, but that was her title. So sometimes when she didn't feel very well, they had board meetings in her dining room.
This is really interesting. These, like I said, the official documents. What are these things here? Well,
in 1959, Beckett merged with Hammermill Paper Company from Erie, Pennsylvania. So all the stock certificates were surrendered to Hammermill, and these are the original share coupons certificates. They were tendered over to Hammermill Paper Company. So Beckett was part of Hammermill from 59 until 86, at which time International Paper Company bought Hammermill. And then Mohawk bought the mill in 2005.
Let's go down here and look at some of the samples of paper that you got. You know, the friendly competitor across the river, Champion, was known pretty much for one kind of paper, that chrome coat that they made for so many years. I was surprised to see that Beckett made so many different kinds of things.
You know, Champion was well known for chrome coat, but they also made a number of papers competitive to Beckett papers, a lot of whites and colors. But we made more colored paper than probably any mill in the country, because we had fairly small machines, so we could make colored papers, shorter runs, economically, which bigger mills could not do. So we went from being a little white paper newsprint mill in 1848 to start diversifying after the Civil War, making some colored papers. And then in the 1900s and through the 20th century, we made many, 400 or 500 different colors.
But the bread and butter was the cover stock, right?
Well, yeah, initially Buckeye cover was first cover paper, 1894, and then we made Beckett cover and other, but we started making, in 1938, they made a grade called Beckett Brilliant Opaque, and it was the first expensive, opaque, bright sheet on the market, and it became the best-selling lithographic sheet in the entire industry from Little Beckett Paper Company. From there on, it brought out other grades, Beckett High White, which was the first fluorescent, really bright white paper there was in the industry. And again, adding more colors and finishes. Beckett was one of the first mills to do national advertising. And something unique, we could take our product, our paper, and put it right into a magazine. These were inserts, so that when you open a magazine, you could feel the product.
So it wasn't just an ad, it was an ad and a sample.
An insert, which is pretty unique. There are not many products like that you can put in the middle of a magazine. And of course, we advertised to printers and advertising agencies and artists throughout the country. And had a number of campaigns. One of our campaigns involved children, and some of them had Beckett children in the ads. So we had some fun. Our company was small enough that we had about 200 distributors from over the country, plus we sold in 30 foreign countries. But we were small enough and knew our distributors well enough that it was like family. So they got a kick out of seeing our family members in the ads.
You can tell by looking at this, I think, how dedicated Beckett was to its employees, just because of the sheer number of photos that you have of all the people here. You have all those photo albums up in the front there, plus you have all these boards. Did you select these yourself?
I went through probably 30, 35 albums, maybe more, and had a wonderful intern from the museum who helped, Mike DeBose. He helped me put all this together. And I selected these from albums we had. And of course, there are hundreds of different photographs here. And it shows people at work, it shows them at play. We worked hard at Beckett, but we also had a lot of fun.
Now up there you have a whole desk, but right here you just have a drawer. What's up with this?
Well, a friend of mine called me 2 or 3 months ago, and a friend of his had this desk in the basement and showed it to him and pulled out this drawer which had all these inscriptions and obviously belonged to somebody who worked at the Beckett Paper Company. So he said, you call her up. So I did, and she said I could borrow the drawer for our exhibit. And so far we have not determined who owned the desk at that time, but it's a piece of history.
Well, it's interesting because it has like dates on here. President Kennedy shot November 22nd, 1963. Robert Kennedy shot. Down here, and that's national news, but here's local news. Richard Queen, last day, 12/16/94.
Yeah.
You know, so there's all kind of little personal anecdotal things in there. That's quite interesting.
It really is unique.
This looks like the meat and potatoes, the real hardcore history stuff here. Life at Beckett's. What were these?
Life at Beckett's was a publication for employees, and it started back in the 30s and came out monthly. A story of employees, their families, also information about what we were doing in the mill. Sometimes we even put samples in, talked about our Christmas parties, retirements. There was always a letter from the president, and just full of information. And we had a nice staff for life at Beckett's. It's quite amazing when you think about how many publications were printed over the years.
And I'm guessing you made the paper too, right?
We made the paper. Good point, Rick.
What I think is interesting with this exhibit is when people come in, we ask them if you can find something that was your relative or a picture of you or whatever, let me know. And we had this father come in with his son and his daughter, and he said, I had worked at Beckett. And I said, well, if you find anything, let me know. Well, about an hour after they'd been here, they came and they gave me this copy of Life at Beckett. And you can see it's the Christmas. The kids are sitting here holding their socks, waiting for Santa Claus to come. And he said, that's my family. And here's the picture of when the father and the daughter and the son, this is the daughter here, this is her here in the picture. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking the son is the little boy that's actually looking in the sock. I'm thinking that's him. But they came and I'm like, can I take your picture? And they said, well, why? I said, now this is going to become part of our permanent archives. And so as we get the stories, we get the human stories coming through like this, we are adding this so that the Beckett collection is continually growing.
That's so neat. Yeah, we use our own paper, of course. This happened to be one Buckeye Text goes to market. This was a brand new grade of paper. So what a obvious way to share it with our employees and their families. Mm-hmm. So that was quite a tradition. The Beckett newsletter, this was the way we communicated with our customers. Starting in 1935, we would have news of the mill section in which we bring our customers up to date on different things going on in the mill and with our staff and products. And William Feather, it was his real name, not a pen name. William Feather was a printer, writer from Cleveland, Ohio. And he wrote essays and a very wonderful writer. So we paid him to do a section for each issue of the Beckett newsletter. So you got a little philosophy and some good reading plus news of the mill information. So that continued from 1935 till 2000. I mentioned that Beckett was very active in the community and we sponsored a lot of activities and sports. We had something unique for Beckett called the 25-Year Club. This was something that started back in the 80s. All of a sudden I realized that we didn't have such a club and we had people who had spent so many years at Beckett. So we started a 25-Year Club. Anybody who was there 25 years or longer, we had a special dinner every year. That was always fun, a real reunion.
So what goes through your mind, Dave, when you sit here and look at all this? I'm sure this was a very emotional experience for you.
It sure was, Rick. Memories. As I say, it was like a family. It was emotional just to go through all these pictures and recall our friendships. But the satisfaction of working for a great little company. I spent 32 years there and loved every day of it. Almost. Almost.
Almost every day. It still is a job, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for showing us around. We really appreciate it. I appreciate your time to put all this together and give us a glimpse into Hamilton's industrial history.